I never thought I'd be the guy posting some crap like this, but here I am. My name's Tom, and I've been married to Lisa for about 6 years now. We met in college, had what seemed like a normal, good life. Pretty standard stuff. We're both in our early 30s, and honestly, I thought we were solid. She's the kind of woman who's always been a little bitchy, real sharp-tongued and a little manipulative when she wants to get her way, but I always thought that was just her personality. Nothing that would threaten what we had. At least, that's what I told myself for a long time. It's funny how quickly everything can turn upside down. It all started with little signs. She'd get a little more evasive when I asked about her day, brushing me off with some snide comment or a fake laugh. I'd catch her looking at her phone a lot more than usual, like she was hiding something. She'd get defensive if I asked her about the texts or notifications she was receiving and would say I was overthinking things, that I was paranoid. Yeah, she's good at lying and spinning stories, so I did. Have much concrete proof, just gut feelings and little odd moments that didn't add up. Then I noticed her tone changing. She'd snap at me over small things, act annoyed when I tried to be romantic, and she was avoiding intimacy more often than not. I'd bring it up and she'd tell me I was being clingy or crazy, that there was nothing wrong. But I could see her eyes darting away when I'd look at her. Her smile no longer felt genuine. Still, I convinced myself maybe she was just stressed or busy with work, that I was just overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was off. I'd find myself staring at her phone, reading between the lines of her silence, wondering if I was just imagining it all. Then one day it happened. It was late at night, and I was just scrolling through our shared photos on my laptop. Nothing unusual, just the usual pictures of us, friends and family. But then I saw a folder she had hidden beneath some random work documents. It was titled Extra Shots with a date from a couple of weeks ago, the night of our friend's wedding. Curious, I clicked on it, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were images of Lisa with the wedding photographer, Mark. It wasn't just a couple of good shots, these were candid moments, intimate, even suggestive. They looked like more than just artistic shots. What really tore me apart was the face-to-face stuff. Mark had his hand on her waist, her leaning into him, her smiling at him like she was lost in some secret world. I could see the slight flush on her cheeks and the way her eyes sparkled, like she was caught up in some adrenaline rush of cheating. This wasn't just a one-time thing, it looked like they'd been sneaking around for a while. And the worst part, I had no idea she was capable of hiding this much, lying straight to my face while she was probably screwing the guy who was supposed to be just arting at our friend's wedding. I don't know how long I stared at those pictures. An hour. More. My mind was racing, confusion, betrayal, anger, all blending into a toxic mess inside me. I felt my fists tighten, my heart pounding so loud I thought the walls might hear it. I couldn't believe she'd do this, after everything, after all the years, the promises we made, the family we built. How could she? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, left breathless and numb. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind, or maybe I just didn't want to see it. But there it was, proof, clear as day. My wife, my partner, was cheating on me with the guy who was supposed to be capturing moments of their art. It felt like my world was shattering right then and there. I didn't sleep that night. Honestly, I don't remember much after I found those pictures. I just kept staring at the screen, trying to process what I had seen. It was like a punch to the gut every time I blinked. My mind spun with questions. How long has this been going on? How could she lie so effortlessly? Was I even enough for her? I felt a mix of rage and deep sadness, like I'd been hit by a train and left to pick up the pieces. I wasn't naive before, but this was next level. The woman I loved, who I thought loved me back, had been sneaking around behind my back, openly flirting with another man at what was supposed to be a happy occasion, and her excuse, that she was just modeling for some art project. I'll never forget the way she spun her lies that morning when I confronted her. I was so furious I could barely get the words out. I shoved the photos in her face and demanded to know what the hell was going on. She looked at me with such disdain, like I was the one in the wrong for catching her. Her response: "You're overreacting, Tom. It's just some stupid shots. "You're crazy if you think I'm cheating on you. Mark's just a photographer. He's professional. He's never even looked at me that way, I swear. You're being paranoid as usual." She laughed a little like I was some jealous idiot throwing a tantrum over nothing. That's the thing with Lisa. She always denies everything until she can't anymore, then she acts like I'm the one with the problem. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I knew what I saw. And more than that, I could see the contempt in her eyes when she lied. She had no shame, no remorse. Just that bitchy smirk that said she was in control, that she was the one calling all the shots. I felt my blood boil. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her confess, but I knew that wouldn't help. I needed a plan. I couldn't just confront her and hope everything would go back to normal. I felt stupid, but I also knew I needed proof, something more concrete. She kept denying everything, but I wasn't going to let her get away with this. If she was capable of lying so easily, I had to be smart. So I decided to dig deeper. I started going through her phone when she was in the shower, checking her social media, trying to find anything that matched the photos I'd seen. I didn't find much at first, just her usual BS about work and friends. But then I remembered Mark's name kept popping up in some of her messages, always brief, always vague. One thing that struck me was her attitude. She was always bitchy and dismissive when I asked about her day or her plans, but now I saw glimpses of manipulation, how she'd twist my concerns into me being paranoid or insecure. I realized she'd probably been gaslighting me for months, maybe longer. She was good at it. She always played the victim, painted herself as the misunderstood wife, but I saw through her now. The next day, I decided I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to slip up again. I had to do something, but I didn't want to blow everything up right away. I wanted to catch her in the act, get undeniable proof, then confront her with everything. It was a dangerous game, I know, but I was beyond caring about playing it safe. I started calling Mark, pretending to be someone else, trying to get him to slip up, to say something incriminating. I even set up a fake social media account just to see if she'd talk to him again. The thing was, she was pretty careless. She kept messaging him, asking about sessions, models, and even sending him weird flirty emojis like she was craving some secret thrill. It was all so clear now. My wife was cheating on me with Mark, her wedding photographer, at my friend's wedding. The fact that she'd lied so blatantly, gaslit me like I was crazy, everything just made me angrier. I felt betrayed not just as her husband, but as a man who thought he knew his wife. The trust was shredded. I had to decide what to do next, but I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I was about to blow open the whole damn thing, and when I did, everything would change. The build-up to the confrontation was agonizing. I spent that afternoon pacing around the house, trying to decide whether I should do it immediately or wait for some kind of perfect moment. Honestly, I was terrified of what I might say or do. Part of me wanted to blast her right then and there, tear her apart, make her admit everything in front of everyone. But another part, the more rational part, knew I had to be strategic. If I just flipped out without solid proof or a plan, I'd probably end up making things worse. She'd lie her way out, deny everything, and I'd be left looking like the crazy husband again. So I kept my head and waited. I kept digging, making sure I had everything lined up. I even started recording our conversations, just in case I needed some kind of evidence to back up what I'd uncovered. That was a weird feeling, knowing I was spying on her, but I told myself it was necessary. I wasn't about to let her walk all over me anymore. Finally, I reached a point where I had enough. I had a folder of incriminating photos, recordings of her denying everything, and enough emotional steam to blow the lid off. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I called her into the living room that evening, telling her I needed to talk. She looked annoyed, her bitchy smirk already forming. She's good at that, pretending like she's the victim even when she's caught red-handed. "Lisa," I said, voice cold but steady, "we need to talk. I know everything. About the photos, about Mark. I saw the messages, the pictures. Don't bother lying. I've got everything. I want to hear it from you. What the hell is going on?" Her eyes widened for just a second, then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Tom, you're crazy. You're paranoid. You always jump to conclusions. This is just some stupid coincidence." "No," I cut her off, pulling out my phone and playing the recordings I'd made. Her voice caught on tape, denying everything, trying to convince me she's innocent. I also showed her some of the messages, those flirty texts, the emoji-laden messages that left zero doubt. Her face drained of color and she finally burst out with a string of bullshit excuses. "It's just sex, okay? Just sex," she spat, crossing her arms. "It doesn't mean anything. We're just two people who happen to—" "Why?" I interrupted. "Why Mark? Why cheat on me with him? What's wrong with us? Why lie like that?" She looked away, then finally shrugged, that bitchy smirk back on her face. "I don't know. Maybe I was bored, maybe I wanted some excitement, or maybe I just wanted to feel good for once. You're always so uptight." It was like she was trying to twist everything around, make it my fault. Like I was the problem, not her. I couldn't believe how easily she lied, how she kept dismissing her own actions. I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she be so callous, so manipulative? I realized in that moment that she was never going to admit she was wrong or sorry. She was just going to keep spinning her web of lies. I looked at her, my hands trembling, fighting back the rage that threatened to take over. I wanted to scream, to shout her down, but I held it in. I knew I'd need every ounce of composure if I was going to do this right. I told her I was done, that I couldn't be with someone who lied and cheated like she had. I told her I was leaving and that she should pack her stuff. She just looked at me, her eyes flashing with that contempt she's famous for. "You're overreacting, Tom. You're just jealous because I still look good and I still get attention. You're insecure. That's why you're blowing this out of proportion." That was the last straw. The moment her words left her mouth, I knew I had to get out. I couldn't stay in the same house with her anymore. Not after everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard. I told her I was done, packed a bag and walked out that door, feeling a strange mix of relief and despair. I still couldn't believe what I'd just done, how I'd let her betray me like that, how I had to find out the truth in such a brutal way. But I knew I had made the right decision, at least for myself. I wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of my dignity, my respect. I just hoped someday I could find a way to move past this, to heal. But right now, I was broken, trying to breathe through the storm she'd unleashed. The days that followed were a blur. I moved out of the house into a temporary place, trying to get some space from the chaos she'd created. Honestly, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. It's one thing to suspect something, but it's another entirely to have it confirmed. The sting of her lying, her dismissiveness, her arrogance, everything just kept replaying in my mind. I kept asking myself how she could be so indifferent, so callous, after all those years we'd spent building what I thought was a life together. I kept replaying the moment I found the photos, over and over. I'd stare at them and try to understand how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her manipulations. It was like she had crafted this perfect illusion of a perfect wife, sweet, bitchy, controlling, and I'd fallen right into it. Now I saw the cracks, the lies, the betrayal, and I couldn't unsee it. I felt raw and exposed, like my heart had been shredded and left to bleed out. The worst part was that she kept texting me nonstop. At first, I ignored her, trying to keep my distance, but then she started playing her games. She'd send messages pretending to be remorseful, asking me to talk, begging me to come back, saying she made a mistake. Yeah, right. She'd also send those bitchy little comments like, "You'll regret leaving," or "You're just jealous because I still look better than any other woman you could find." It made me sick to read that stuff. I wanted to scream at her, tell her she's a narcissist, but I knew that wouldn't accomplish anything. I also ran into some of our friends who knew about her affair, because, of course, she kept up her lies around them too. They looked at me with sympathy, but I could tell they didn't really know the full story. I didn't want to tell everyone yet, not until I had a plan. I wasn't about to make her the victim of some pity party. No, she deserved to be exposed for what she was, a selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. The hardest part was telling myself I was better off without her, even though it felt like my world was crumbling. I'd loved her once. I'd trusted her. And now I felt like I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible. It was like my heart had been shattered into a million pieces, and I had no clue how to put it back together. I kept thinking about the good times, the promises, the dreams we had. All of that felt so distant now. I kept asking myself how I'd let this happen, how I'd been so stupid to believe she was everything I ever wanted. I knew I had to make decisions. I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I needed to get some closure, find a way to move on. I reached out to a lawyer, started looking into divorce options, and began planning how I'd handle the fallout. I also knew I couldn't keep this bottled up. I reached out to a couple of friends I trust, people who'd been through similar stuff, just to get some perspective. They told me to focus on myself, to not let her destroy me completely. Honestly, that's easier said than done. Some nights I lie awake, replaying everything she said, everything she did, trying to figure out how I missed the signs or how I could have done things differently. One thing that struck me is how her attitude hadn't changed even after I confronted her. She still acted bitchy, dismissive, and like she was the victim. That was her game, playing the innocent wife, the misunderstood woman. But I saw through her now. I knew the truth. I knew she was a liar, a cheat, and she didn't care about the damage she'd done. That realization made me more furious, more determined to get out of this mess and to rebuild my life without her. I still don't know exactly what the future holds. Part of me feels relief, but another part feels broken beyond repair. I guess I learned the hard way that sometimes people aren't who they appear to be, and you have to be careful about the masks they wear. I hope I can find a way to move past this, but right now, all I want is to make sense of the chaos she left behind. After a couple of weeks of living apart, I finally started to think more clearly. The initial shock and rage had faded enough for me to breathe a little easier, but the scars remained. I felt like I was slowly picking up the pieces of a shattered life, piece by painful piece. The thing that haunted me most was how easily Lisa had lied, how she'd manipulated everyone around her, including me, for so long. I kept replaying the moments when she dismissed my concerns, the times she'd give me that bitchy smirk, like she was in control. It made me realize how skilled she was at hiding her true self, so good that I'd been blind to it for so long. I made the decision to file for divorce. I didn't want to waste any more time on someone who had no respect for me. I wanted out, and I wanted to leave her with nothing to hold on to. I knew I wouldn't get closure from her, but I could at least take control of my own life. I started organizing my finances, gathering the necessary documents, and planning what to say when I finally confronted her face to face. I knew she'd try to spin it again, but I was prepared this time. One day, I called her and told her I wanted to meet up. She immediately got defensive, trying to guilt-trip me about how I was throwing everything away, how she still loved me, and how we could work this out. I just cut her off, telling her I wasn't interested in her lies anymore. I laid out my plans, how I was filing for divorce, how I'd be taking everything I could, and how I wasn't going to be part of her manipulative games any longer. Her voice cracked a little, but she still tried to act bitchy and dismissive, telling me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret losing her. When I finally sat her down in that cold, sterile lawyer's office, I saw her for what she really was. She was frantic, trying to throw her usual guilt trips and blame on me. "You're just insecure," she spat. "You're jealous of Mark and you're overreacting." I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew everything, the lies, the cheating, the manipulations. I told her I was done playing her game and that I was seeking a clean break. She tried to scream, cry, even accuse me of being the one cheating, but I shut her down. I felt no remorse for her, only relief that I was finally taking back control. The divorce process was messy, but I made sure I kept my focus. I didn't want her to drag me down with her anymore. I kept a low profile, avoided her toxic presence, and tried to rebuild my confidence. I also started therapy just to help me process all the feelings, anger, betrayal, sadness, that kept coming up. I didn't want her to win. Even after all she did, I still wanted to be better, stronger. In the end, I learned a lot about trust, manipulation, and how dangerous it can be to ignore your instincts. Lisa's betrayal was a shock, but it also opened my eyes to the reality of who she really was. It's easy to believe in fairy tales of perfect love, but sometimes people are just pretending. I realized I had to put myself first to protect my heart and my sanity. I'm not completely healed, but I'm taking steps forward. And honestly, I don't regret leaving her behind. I never want to go through that kind of betrayal again, and I want to rebuild my life, however long it takes. If I could give any advice, it's this. Trust your gut, don't ignore the signs, and don't let anyone manipulate or lie to you. It's better to be alone than to stay with someone who doesn't respect you. Sometimes, you have to burn everything down to rebuild something better. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated the depths of betrayal and how it can shake your entire foundation. That woman I thought I knew, the one I married, turned out to be someone entirely different, someone I never really knew. It's a painful lesson, but one I needed to learn. I kept trying to see the good in her, to believe her lies because it was easier than facing the truth. I had been played, used, and discarded like yesterday's trash. The thing that stuck with me most is how her bitchy attitude never really changed, no matter how much I confronted her or how deeply I was hurt. She was so good at pretending to be innocent, so convincing in her lies that even I started questioning my own judgment. But the evidence was undeniable. Every photo, every message, every word I recorded, it all painted a clear picture. Lisa wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was selfish, manipulative, and completely indifferent to the damage she'd caused. Getting out of that marriage was like finally taking a breath after holding it for too long. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the pain. I mourned the loss of the woman I thought I loved while simultaneously feeling a strange sense of liberation. I learned not to trust blindly and to listen to that little voice inside that warns you when something's wrong. I also learned that sometimes the biggest betrayals come from people you trust the most, and they leave scars that never fully fade. Now, I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. I got rid of everything that reminded me of her, the photos, her clothes, her lies. I cut out the toxic people who sided with her or refused to see the truth. I went back to therapy, learned how to forgive myself for trusting her, and started focusing on myself. I've even begun dating again, cautiously, but with a new sense of awareness. I refuse to let her define my future. The lesson I want anyone reading this to take is simple. Don't ignore the red flags. If someone is lying, hiding their phone, being bitchy for no reason, or dismissing your concerns, it's probably not a coincidence. Trust your instincts. Because in the end, betrayal is a painful but necessary wake-up call. It's better to be alone and true to yourself than to stay in a lie just to avoid the pain of ending something that was never real to begin with. I don't hate her. I don't even wish her ill. But I do wish I'd seen through the bullshit sooner. I wish I'd listened to that little voice warning me that things weren't right. That's the biggest takeaway. Never ignore your gut. It's your best friend when everyone else is lying to you. I hope she gets what she deserves someday, but honestly, I'm more focused on rebuilding my life and making sure I never let myself be blinded again. And if there's one thing I want everyone to remember, it's this. No one is worth losing yourself over. Not even the person you thought was your soulmate. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign you respect yourself enough to know when enough is enough.